Mablett has gone forward with Stewart to the right, Lineker and Howes to the left. Is Gascoigne going to have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, I say! Brilliant! That is schoolboy's own stuff. Oh, I bet even he can't believe it. Is there anything left from this man to surprise us? That was one of the finest free kicks that this stadium has ever seen.
Hello and welcome to episode 65 of Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Well, here we are, another week, more drama, Geoff, but before that, your trivia question.
Okay, a relevant question this week. Jose Mourinho could become just the fifth manager to win the top flight English title, in other words, the Division 1 title or Premier League title, with two different clubs. But who are the current four who have done it?
Fantastic. We'll find out at the end of the show. Before all that, lots to get through. What a week of football. Let's start at the beginning of an incredible week and look at some of the scores and what happened during last week's round of games. We'll start with Wolverhampton Wanderers, who lost at home to Aston Villa, Geoff.
I think we had that down as a draw. If Wolves would just start to play in the first half, they do extremely well. For some reason, they always start very slowly in the first halves are bad. They suffered from having a player sent off, which didn't help them very much. And Villa they have one game where they're very good, and then there'll be another game where they're not so good, and another game where they're very good. That was a game where they were very good.
Yes, two red cards in that game, one in the 95th minute for Wolves, Moutinho, and 10 minutes before that, Douglas Luiz for Villa, and Villa got the late penalty. I want to see Manchester United play Wolves, because Wolves only start playing in the second half. Man United only start playing when they've gone down. So I'd like to see Wolves stop playing in the second half and get a goal, and then Man United come at them. That would be a good game.
Well, actually, any game that Wolves play is a good game to watch. You know, the issue for Manchester United, of course, is they can't unlock defences which are set up deep because they don't work on the routines that will enable them to do it. They don't have a plan. So I'd take Wolves to win that match anyway.
Oh, well, let's look at Manchester United next then, because there was, of course, the Manchester derby, Man United against Man City, 0-0, and from all reports, probably both teams were lucky to get nil. It was one of the worst games of the season, and a lot of people saying one of the worst games in living memory. Neither side seems to be able to create anything at all.
Yeah, it was a rerun of West Germany versus Austria in the World Cup, wasn't it? A pre-arranged 0-0 draw. Yeah, it was a shocking game, terrible game. Entertaining thing about that match was the performance after by Micah Richards in the commentary booth, along with Roy Keane and Gary Neville, where every time Keane and Neville tried to speak about Pogba, they just got interrupted by Micah Richards, who kept saying, the Manchester United have got to show him the love. They're not showing him the love. He's really good. He's world class for France because they love him, which is crap. He's had one good game for France in 3 years. One single good game for France. And as Keane and Neville were trying to say, if you have a player who doesn't want to play for you, get rid of him. Manchester United got rid of Roy Keane, they got rid of Jaap Stam, they got rid of Ronaldo, they got rid of Beckham, and they survived. And the same will happen when they get rid of Pogba. They should never have brought him back. It was a disastrous decision, driven only by the money, and the only reason he's playing is the commercial money behind him, and the people paying that money want to see him on the pitch.
Yes, and all those players you mentioned there who were got rid of for either being too big for their boots or out of sorts with the team, all of them, including Jaap Stam, I don't even hesitate to add, are better than Pogba and were not missed. So I don't know why everybody's clamouring to mollycoddle him or to keep him or to praise him. He's not only not as good as his hype, I suppose, or as good as he's billed to be, but when he plays, Man United seem to play worse anyway. So quite clearly, the players aren't that happy with him either.
Yes, and as Keane and Neville were trying to say, when you bring in a big name signing, a big money signing, you want him to change the team. You want him to have the impact on the team. It's not the team should be built around them. He has to make it happen, and Pogba's not prepared to, so he's got to go. Personally, I'm very happy that Manchester United keeps Solskjaer and Pogba, and for the longer the better.
Yes, it doesn't seem to be doing me any good either way with the manager or Pogba, but his agent has come out a couple of times this last week, very vocal, saying, number one, Pogba's finished at United, and this, that and the other, and he wants to go, and he will go. And then coming out with then created a bit of a fuss, and then he's come out with another statement this week, kind of placating United, I suppose, but clearly the agent has never ever had a very good relationship with United going back quite a way.
No, he hasn't. And I think the question for Manchester United when Pogba goes is, do they ever deal with the Raiola again? Because if I was them, I wouldn't. But the thing that people like Mika Richards and Pogba's other acolytes and sycophants in the press keep forgetting to tell you is that when an agent speaks on your behalf, he is you speaking. That is legally what he is. He is you. You have appointed this person to be the agent of me. Raiola didn't say anything that Pogba was not already thinking and agreeing with.
Yeah, because Pogba's come out with all sorts of statements as well. Yes, I mean, the agent is your representative. That is another word for agents. So, they've obviously discussed it, and Raiola must have said, listen, Paul, I'm going to say this week. Back me up or keep quiet. Is this what you want me to say? And he said, yeah, I want out. And then they've both come out and sort of rearranged what they've said previously and tried to stem the flow of the tide, I suppose. But really, there's no doubt he's going to go. But where would he go?
I think that's a very good question. I can't imagine any of the genuinely big teams being interested in him except maybe PSG. Juventus don't need him, and I don't think they want him. They made that reasonably plain last season. Real Madrid, why? I cannot think of a single reason why they would need him or want him. It would have to be PSG.
I mean, there was talk, wasn't there, of Man United and Juventus doing a swap, Dybala and Pogba. But really, there's only one winner there, and that's Manchester United, but also Dybala and Pogba and their agents.
Well, yeah, if I was Dybala, I'd not want to go to Manchester United while Solskjaer's there because they're a joke. So I don't know. I don't know. It would Dybala for Pogba would be a fantastic upgrade for Manchester United. But when you look at Manchester United's midfield with Fernandes and Van der Beek playing, maybe you add Dybala to that and it would be superb. But Manchester United's forwards are good. That's not the area that they need reinforcing. It's their defence that's terrible.
All right. Well, that rumbles on the Pogba and the Solskjaer debate. Should they stay? Should they go? The answer being they should go. Both of them. Newcastle United 2, West Bromwich Albion 1. I don't suppose we should be surprised at that, the way West Brom's season's been going.
The matches I've seen of West Brom, they've looked quite a decent side going forward. They just don't have a cutting edge. And if you can't score when you're on top, you're going to struggle. And West Brom will struggle. I think they'll be relegated.
Then the other, I suppose the biggest game, apart from, you'd imagine, the Manchester derby, was Everton 1, Chelsea 0. Chelsea have since played again, but little did we know. But on Saturday, but Everton beating Chelsea. They've started to crawl back a bit after their amazing start, Everton.
Yeah, the problems they had were in defence, where they started leaking goals, and they've stopped leaking goals now, and they look much better. I think these results for Lampard, in a strange way, are quite positive for him. If you look at his history as a manager, I know it's not a long one, but every time he's had a setback, he's learned from it and he's come back stronger. And I think these last two results, losing last night at Wolves when they dominated the game, will in a strange way help him. And the Wolves match wasn't just that they dominated possession, it wasn't sterile possession in their own half. The game was played around the Wolves penalty area. They just lacked the final pass, the cutting edge to make the chances. I think Lampard might actually be quite happy because the pressure's off him. He's got the time and the motivation to make the players do better, and he can work the things that he needs, he can work on. And I think he'll come back a better manager for it, because every setback he's had, he's come back better for it. He's got that history to fall back on. The people at Chelsea know about it. It will be better for them.
I just want to add to that because I'm a Tottenham fan, so absolutely no love from me for Chelsea and certainly not for Lampard, but respect to him really, because unlike certain other managers currently, and of course famously in the past, he's got a player, Giroud, who was kind of sidelined, kind of wasn't in his plans very much, but now is the only one scoring for Chelsea. But not once have I heard Lampard come out and say anything controversial about him. He's not ostracised him like Mesut Ozil at Arsenal. He's not talked the player down or talked him up. He's been very quiet and reserved and just carried on with his job. And I think Giroud has also been the same. Credit to Giroud, big player, sidelined, looked like his future at Chelsea wasn't great. And Lampard stuck by him, or stuck with the plan, and involved him when he can. He's kept his counsel, and I think there's a lot of maturity in Lampard.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing that he said about Giroud when he was pushed was, no, Giroud is a big part of our plans. He's going to have a big role to play this season. I'm very happy with him and what he's doing. And when Giroud got all those goals in the Champions League, he'd earned a recall, and he got one. So every player in the Chelsea squad now knows if you play really well, you will get a game. And that's what every manager wants. Now every player is working and pulling in the same direction. What more could you want?
Yes, I'm also delighted that Chelsea have lost 2 in a row, but we'll come to that in a little while, because with the Tottenham situation at the moment, it's good when your fellow title or top 4 contenders falter. But I don't think there's any panic there at Chelsea. I'm sure they've got a strong squad, and as I say, a mature leader there in Lampard. As you say, I think he might use those 2 defeats to shore up where there have been problems and mistakes, and to get his players working a little bit harder. However, that is not so much the case with Arteta at Arsenal. You can imagine my delight having watched my team Tottenham draw with Crystal Palace, which we'll talk about in a moment, when Arsenal lost at home to Burnley. On the podcast this time last week, we said we couldn't believe Arteta was still in the job. Would imagine that by the time we'd edited it and released it, that possibly Arteta would have been sacked. And here we are, 7 days later, another loss for Arsenal, and he's still in a job.
It is remarkable, isn't it? Contrast him with Lampard. Lampard has some experience to fall back on. He has a lot of experience as a player, winning Champions League, winning the Premier League, FA Cups, etc. And he has experience as a manager, two seasons, and you can see the progression of him as a manager. The groundsman at the Wanderers has nothing. He has nothing to fall back on. No experience whatsoever. There is nothing to back up any of the journalists' claims about him being a great manager. Or now we've even got to the stage where the sycophants in the press are now blaming the players. I'm sorry, but a team wins together and loses together. You don't pick elements out of it and say, oh, he's at fault. And Arteta's sycophants in the press are now blaming the players for it. And it's ridiculous. Guardiola was also asked for his opinion of the groundsman's impact at the Wanderers, and he said, if I was part of the board, I would not have any doubts about his capacity to put Arsenal in the place they deserve to be, which I think every Spurs fan would 100% agree with.
Yes, they're almost in the right place. A couple of places below would be even better. Arsenal 0, Burnley 1. That was a veritable relegation battle 6-pointer, because Burnley also desperately needing the points.
Yeah, as you know, throughout the whole of this season, I've said that I think Burnley will escape from the relegation and places, and they will be fine. Their only problem is who's going to score the goals, and thankfully Aubameyang popped up and helped them out.
Yeah, let's talk about that game a little bit. Aubameyang there, you've got a feel for him. He scored more goals for Burnley at the Emirates than he has for his own team Arsenal, which is just one goal from not one from open play. Arsenal have got 10 goals this season, which is pretty bad in 12 games. One player at Tottenham, Son, has got that many. Also, their disciplinary record under Arteta is not great. Since he took over last December, 6 red cards in the Premier League alone, double what any other Premier League side have got in that period. Double. And 2 of those for violent conduct. This week, Xhaka, the other week, Pepe. Is the disciplinary problem just because of frustration, because they're not doing as well as they should, or is it something the manager hasn't addressed?
I think the Pepe one was more stupidity than anything terribly serious, to be quite honest. Xhaka was a big problem, and yes, I'd imagine frustration is a big part of it. However, if you look at all the things that are going wrong at the Wanderers, all of them come straight back to the manager. It's not good enough to say, oh, yes, we're going to hit 44 balls into the penalty area and hope that by some fluke something falls to one of our forwards and we score, and then boast about it afterwards. Use that as some sort of excuse. Oh no, look, we did really well. We had 44 crosses. There was a match a few years ago, I think it was Tottenham, I think it was, had 81 crosses or no, it's Manchester United, wasn't it? They had 81 crosses in one match and didn't score from them. Well, that's because if you make a cross, you've got to pick a player out, not just lump the ball into the mess in the middle where lots of players are. Every single thing that is wrong with Arsenal, the increased number of goals they've conceded, the far fewer number of goals they've scored, the far fewer number of points, every single thing comes back to the manager. He is not good enough. He's an empty suit, and the sooner they get rid of him, the better.
No, the better for Arsenal, not for the rest of us. I mean, not only as a Tottenham fan am I loving it, it's providing great content for the podcast. But he did say something. I mean, obviously these things are said in context, and you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But he was asked about the red card, and he said, obviously it changes the game, etc., the usual thing. But he also said in his post-match interview with BBC Sport, I don't know what it is we have to do to score a goal. Well, Mikel, if you don't know, Who is supposed to know?
Well, yeah, I mean, he showed by his comments that he doesn't know, doesn't he? That lumping 44 crosses into the penalty area and claiming that as some sort of success tells you exactly why they're not scoring goals. He went on, we haven't had any goals from midfield. It's something that has to be addressed. To change the qualities and characteristics of players is very, very difficult. A big team needs players in midfield who score goals. Okay, it's the fault of the midfield then, not Arteta, not the manager. It's the midfield's fault. So now we know. I was brought up to think that the manager sets the tactics, practices, picks the team to execute them in a match, but apparently not. Apparently that's the midfield.
Yes, it's playing the blame game and certainly not accepting any responsibility yourself is not very mature from a manager. This is Arsenal's worst start. We keep saying it's their worst start, but obviously that increases every week they keep losing. But it's like 46 years now. They're 15th in the league. They've got 13 points. They've scored a total of 10 goals. They've had 2 red cards this season in close proximity. And yet there he is still in a job. I mean, we talked about Burnley and Sheffield United. Would they get rid of their manager? This is Arsenal, who believe themselves to be, let's say, top 6 and one of the biggest clubs in the world and all that rubbish. And yet they're hanging on to a manager that's had no experience. He's been in a job for a year and he's taken them right down to 15th.
Yeah, and the guy who was there, Emslin Sat, who is a very, very well-respected general manager, sort of player finder around Europe, was the one member of the committee that were trying to find a manager to replace Emery, who stated categorically, no, Arteta has got no background, no experience, we should not hire him. He needs to go and get some experience somewhere. So after the groundsman was appointed, he was, Emslin Sat was fired. Arteta's friend Edu was brought in as football director, his friend. So there you go.
Yes, and Edu's now saying all those lovely things about what a great manager he is. He's taking us in the right direction, but he's not. I don't know how you can say that. No,
it's a question of fact that he's taking them in exactly the opposite direction than the one they need and want to go to, and blaming the players for his own shortcomings. It's a mystery to me. The biggest mystery actually is why his sycophants and acolytes in the press continue to put these puff pieces up, making out that he's some sort of great manager. On what basis do you say Arteta is a great manager? He has never managed anybody. He has no experience whatsoever. And he's showing it. He's showing it very, very clearly.
Yeah, there are many things that make a great manager or a good manager or a manager who shouldn't be sacked. They lost 2-0 in the North London derby at Tottenham, who were top of the league at the time. No great shame in that, no cause for panic. But then in the period between that and then losing at home to Burnley, who are in a relegation battle, in the period between those 2 games, some of the things he came out and said would normally and should normally send shockwaves throughout a football board. And then after saying all those ridiculous things, to lose at home to Burnley, any other board would have pulled the trigger, including Man United, who are hanging on with Solskjaer, but he keeps turning it round and getting the odd result and keeping himself in a job. But Arteta hasn't done anything to make a board feel secure.
No, they seem to rely on this idea of the heroic former player returning to the club. You know, Solskjaer going back to Manchester United, Lampard going back to Chelsea. Well, at least those 2 were heroic former players. Arteta wasn't. When was Arteta a heroic, successful former player at Arsenal? When did he win the league with Arsenal? When did he win the Champions League with Arsenal? Was I asleep? Did I miss it? He's not a former great player. Patrick Vieira is a former great player. Emmanuel Petit is a former great player. Tony Adams is a former great player. Thierry Henry is a former great player. Arteta? Are you having a laugh? I mean, they've invented the excuse that justifies the position, and because there is nothing behind it and he has no experience behind him to fall back on, it's all going wrong. Well, they deserve everything they get.
Yeah, I was going to say it's almost a cult of personality, but personality would be a misuse of the word, wouldn't it, in Arteta's case? We may come back to Arsenal, but let's move on to some of the other games of that very afternoon. Southampton beat Sheffield United 3-0. Southampton, well, everybody's beating Sheffield United, sadly. 1 point out of 12 games, not great. But Southampton are very good.
Southampton are very good, and they're coached by a very, very good coach, Hasenhüttl, who, if you didn't know, go back and look up RB Leipzig's performances under him. He took them into the Bundesliga, took them first season up into the Champions League. He's a very, very good manager. It's not just me saying that, but a certain Sir Alex Ferguson says it as well, and calls him periodically to say, you're doing well, keep it up. They are doing well, and if you wanted to put some money on a bet, put money on Southampton for 5th.
Yeah, I think they could very well. I mean, I'm not sure about 5th, but definitely they've got to be up there with top 6, 5th, yeah. Great manager. As you said, Ferguson, I think you mentioned it on this podcast or on the radio show we do for 93.6 Global Radio here on the Costa del Sol, that you've mentioned that when a year ago, just over a year ago now, Southampton lost 9-0 at home, 9-0 at home to Leicester, Ferguson called him and said, look, if you're having any doubts, you are a good manager, these things happen. And Hasenhüttl himself said, well, that was one of the things that made me stick at the job. Ferguson, class act. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Always has been, always will be. But Southampton 3, Sheffield United 0. Very, very good result for Southampton. Now, Crystal Palace Tottenham, you said that Palace are one of those teams that upset the leaders and the top 4 teams when they're on a bit of a roll. Tottenham, top of the league, looking good, only lost once, couple of draws that they shouldn't possibly have had. One of them with West Ham would be clear at the top if it wasn't for those two. But Crystal Palace won, Tottenham won. I watched the game. Wonder goal from Crystal Palace, and their goalkeeper, especially in the last 20 minutes or so, suddenly from letting a tame shot from Kane creep under his body for Tottenham to go ahead, suddenly became world class.
Lev Yashin, even.
Yes, he became Lev Yashin. Tottenham should have won that 3-1. He should never have stopped some of those shots. He just never should have. On another day, we would have come away with a 3-1 victory if it hadn't been for that goalkeeper. But I think a draw was a fair result, and it didn't worry me. I'm not suddenly thinking, it's all going to go wrong now. We've gone Spursy. I just think they frustrated us. I was expecting Bale to play. There was rumours he was going to go on and start the game. I think that would have been a great game for him, actually. But turns out he's got the flu, and Mourinho pointed out, said, before anybody says anything, no, it's not this COVID-19. He's got an actual flu. Well done, Jose.
Yeah, and well done, Roy Hodgson. I said contrast Lampard with the groundsman. Well, contrast Hodgson with the groundsman. Hodgson is not known to be a tactical genius. He certainly doesn't do any of the things that the modern managers do in terms of transition from defence to attack and routines for the forwards to play and to run at and setting traps for the defence when you're pressing. He doesn't do any of that. He just sets his team up to be incredibly difficult to beat. He knows how to do that, and he does it. Jose Mourinho knew that's what he was going to face when he went there. And the flip side of the coin at Crystal Palace is that there is Wilfried Zaha and the new lad Eze, who are very, very dangerous on the break. So Mourinho said, okay, we're going to make sure we're not going to be beaten by these guys on the break, and the way he set the team up, it worked very well. They created enough chances to have won the game, but Palace set out to do something. They did it very well. They succeeded, so you have to say, well, fair play to you, and acknowledge that Hodgson, whilst not a tactical genius, doesn't know what he's doing. He has all that experience to fall back on.
Yes, I think that's a fair summary, because Tottenham didn't suddenly start playing badly or have a frustrating, difficult day at the office, possibly, but I think that was down to Crystal Palace setting up right.
Yeah, and there is no obligation on Crystal Palace to make it a pretty football match to watch. They're there to, first of all, not lose, and secondly, to win if they can.
Yes, absolutely, and I think Tottenham probably deserved that draw. Certainly didn't deserve to lose, but then Palace probably didn't either. But if it hadn't been for that goalkeeper, we would have, let's say, snatched a victory from them. Maybe not deserved it over the 90 minutes, but no worries for me with Tottenham about that particularly. Just a quick word about Roy Hodgson. I think, he's underestimated. He probably punching way above his weight at Liverpool, and it didn't work out. He is at the right level. He is a manager of a Crystal Palace and all of the other teams he's managed. But let's not remember, he has managed teams all over the world, and he speaks 5 languages. This is not some idiot that the press take the mickey out of. This is a very, very clever, intelligent and experienced manager. The only thing for me is that he does stand for me as a blazing indictment of Tory Britain. A man of 74 still having to work. Dreadful.
Many, many years ago, when I was training as an accountant, we had a client in East Finchley who make ceramic tiles, floor tiles and wall tiles, and they were called Ramus tiles, and Ramus in reverse is Samor, which is the name of the family. And I was talking to the managing director one day, who was about 63, 64 years old, and he was telling me that he wanted to retire. And I said, well, you've got a profitable business here, you can sell it to someone and retire. He said, no, I can't. He said, the business was started by my father. And I took over, and he said, and unfortunately my dad is still working on the production line making the tiles. His father was 90 years old, and he didn't want to retire, so his son couldn't either.
Yeah, a bit weird retiring before your dad. It's in Roy Hodgson's blood in much the same way that tile dust was in those guys' blood, I suppose. And you just can't drop it. You can't let it lie. But Roy Hodgson, yeah, that's about the right level for him, and I mean that in the best possible way. And well done. Crystal Palace won, Tottenham won. Fulham won, Liverpool won was the much more shocking result. Tottenham are title contenders, but probably Liverpool are the ones who are going to win it. Certainly Tottenham are top 4 contenders. Where on a day that we maybe drop points, Liverpool dropped points to somebody they really shouldn't have.
Yeah, it started off very, very well for Liverpool, but Fulham were very, very surprising. They played extremely well. They looked a genuine side, and I must admit I was not expecting to see that at all. There is an issue at Liverpool, and the issue is, and Liverpool fans will hate this, but the issue is Mohamed Salah. He's not scoring goals, and you could put up with his selfishness in his general play while he's scoring 30 goals for you, but when he's not scoring those goals for you, then that selfishness ends up costing them, and it did in this match. Many, many times where he could have played Firmino through or Mane through and didn't. Now, he's been doing that for the last 3 years. This is nothing new. Everyone at Liverpool knows about it, but in this match against Fulham, it cost them the win, and it's been there all the time. You can see it all the time. You know, the only way you get away with that as a player is if you score the goals, and he's not.
Yes, I mean, after having watched Crystal Palace against Tottenham, I stayed in the bar to watch that Liverpool game. Obviously, you can only watch so much of it because the bars all close at 6 o'clock here. But I watched the first half of that game, and I turned to Kirk, who I sat with, and I said, "Are you sure this is Fulham?" Because they went at Liverpool, and they played some very attractive and very accurate passing and fast-flowing football, and it didn't look like the Fulham that you would imagine based on results. And Liverpool were pegged back for large parts of that game.
Just imagine how good the Arsenal would be if they had Scott Barker as manager.
Yeah. Yes, just to finish off with that one, Jurgen Klopp said that when asked about Fulham playing such great football, he said, well, they're a very good-looking team, just like their manager. Which is a little bit unfair. Not only is he good-looking, but we've said he'd struggle in the Premier League, but he did very well in that game. And points definitely dropped by Liverpool. Points gained by Leicester. Leicester 3, Brighton 0.
Well, there's not much to say about that. I think a lot of us had that result down beforehand. Leicester City were a very, very good team where they can get all their players on the pitch. They got, I think, 9 out of their starting 11 on the pitch, so they look very good. They're always going to score goals. The players that they've missed have been holding midfielders and defenders, which has meant they've conceded goals. Last week it didn't happen. I don't think it's a great surprise. Brighton play very good football, but they can't score. And if you can't score, you're not going to get points, are you?
No, but thankfully for Brighton, they have got teams below them that are doing a lot worse, although West Brom and Fulham picked up points. And then we come to what was very interesting last night. 2 very interesting results, talking of the bottom, but also out towards the top. Chelsea, having lost that game to Everton at home, were away at Wolves, who you said great in the second half. Well, they proved you right in this game. Wolves 2, Chelsea 1. But Wolves only taking that lead and finishing off winners in 5 minutes of added on time.
I think Chelsea were very unlucky to lose the match. But as I said before, I don't think Lampard is going to mind that much. It gives him a lot of things to work on, which the players can see. They can see the results of what they were doing, so they'll buy into whatever it is that he introduces to put it right. And history tells us that he will put it right, because that's what he's always done. And I think takes pressure off Chelsea. The last thing Chelsea need at the moment is to be top of the league with all that pressure. They're much better off chasing, and I think they'll be fine. They'll finish third. And Wolves, just think what they could do if they actually played in the first half. It's a mystery to me why it seems to be a conscious thing, is that they do genuinely push the players further forward in the second half than the first half. And it's a strange thing to me. If they play the whole match, they'd win more, surely.
Yes, you've got a bit of work for the 90 minutes, so you might as well put a shift in. The other game last night was Manchester City 1. Sounds like it's going to plan. West Brom 1.
I'll repeat, West Brom's problem is going to be scoring goals, but if the opposition centre-back does it for you, then you don't need to, do you? Yeah. City's problem is Jesus. If City have Aguero Aguero on the pitch and can keep him fit for the rest of the season, they'll finish second. If they don't, well, who knows? Because it's not just the goals that Aguero scores that they miss, it's the runs that he makes and the problems he causes defences, and Jesus just doesn't. He's a completely selfish 6-yard area poacher, which you can live with. I mean, Bayern Munich did extremely well with Gerd Müller in that position. Brazil won the World Cup with Romario. If you're set up for that, and if that player does actually score the goals, that's fine. But Jesus doesn't. You know, I don't think I've seen a striker miss as many as him for a very, very long time. So when he does finally get the ball, he does nothing with it. And I think Guardiola must be tearing what's left of his hair out.
Yeah, and Jesus doesn't cope with crosses very well.
Yeah, it's not working with Jesus. So what Guardiola's done in the past when he's had problem with the centre forward is quite simply not play one. So if I was him, I'd put Foden in the side, drop Jesus, and just have players coming from wide, crisscrossing in the penalty area, defenders not knowing who to mark because they don't have a centre forward to mark, and create confusion and hope that creates something. It's very sad to see De Bruyne receiving the ball in the inside left position, looking up, and there's no run on at all. Nobody creating any space, and Foden does that extremely well. So have a front that includes Mahrez, Foden, Sterling, De Bruyne. It would be entertaining and could actually work, but having Jesus up front doesn't work.
And before we move on to our predictions for next week, or this tonight and the coming weekend, last Friday West Ham got a 2-1 away result at Leeds.
Yeah, a very good result. I mean, nobody knows what you're going to get from Leeds. They could win 5-0, lose 5-0, or any score in between. And their weakness against set pieces and headers was shown up. Soucek and Ogbonna getting 2 very, very good headed goals. They were quite brilliant, both of them. And that is a weakness for Leeds. It was a weakness in that match because the centre-back they brought from Germany in the close season, Koch, wasn't playing. He's been the rock in the centre of their defence, and without him they look a bit weak. But it was a very, very good result for West Ham.
Yeah, temporarily at least West Ham were back up to 5th again and looking good, especially with some of the other teams like Arsenal not doing as well as expected.
Yeah, but I only like to talk about the competition to West Ham, so can you keep your Arsenal comments for people interested, like Fulham and West Brom fans?
Yeah, we don't mix West Ham, of course not, with the mid-table and relegation teams, of course not. So that was West Ham getting a credible 2-1 win away at Leeds. Tonight, as we enter the next round of games, by the time you listen to this, probably all these games will be done and dusted, but it does bear mentioning Tottenham, league leaders currently on goal difference to Liverpool, are away at Liverpool, and I see nothing but a Liverpool victory. Tottenham did falter a bit against Palace and did look a little bit out of sorts for me. They've only lost once this season in 12, but I think we'll lose at Liverpool.
I don't know. It all depends on this Salah factor, which I mentioned earlier on. Mourinho will definitely park the bus and be incredibly difficult to beat. And then you'll have Son and Kane on the break. So can they do something against Liverpool's defence, which, to be fair, has actually looked very good, even despite losing Van Dijk and another central defender whose name I've forgotten. I think a draw is a more likely result than a win for either team, to be honest.
I'd take a draw. I think away at Liverpool, definitely. There's a few other games tonight, but since it's just a few hours away from recording, we're going to move on to what's going to be happening this weekend. Crystal Palace host Liverpool. So they've got top two teams in a row. They drew with Tottenham. What's going to happen? I think Palace will lose to Liverpool.
Yeah, I agree. I think Liverpool will have too much for them.
Southampton, Manchester City, on paper, that's a very exciting game. I would hope for an expected draw, I think.
I'm tempted to say 3-3 draw. Whoa. But will City score 3 goals? No, I'll say 2-1 win to Southampton. Everton against the Wanderers. Oh, well, Everton should win that, shouldn't they? They're a much stronger team. Stronger in every respect, actually. Physically stronger. They work harder, they run further, they're more talented. 2-1.
During the week, Arsenal tonight are going to be playing Southampton. If they lose that, by Saturday when they play Everton, maybe Arteta will finally be gone. Certainly if they lose tonight against Southampton, they'll be under the cosh at Everton. I think Everton, should win that. They've started to win again. And if Arsenal do badly tonight, then I think Everton will have a big chance there. Newcastle United against Fulham. Well, if Fulham play like they did against Liverpool, they'll beat Newcastle, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, you're right. If they play as well as they did last week, then it should be 2-0 to Fulham. I'll say they will play that well, and it will be 2-0 to Fulham.
On Sunday, Brighton against Sheffield. Could be quite a desperate game.
Yeah, that's right. Two teams playing each other who can't score. Brighton are playing very, very good football, but can't score. But I'll pick them to win 1-0. 1-0 to Brighton.
And then Tottenham play Leicester. We've had Chelsea, we've had Man City, we've had Arsenal, Liverpool tonight, and next up Leicester. The tough games keep on coming, but Tottenham against Leicester, again, depending on how they do tonight, I suppose. I don't know, but I think 2-1 to Tottenham.
Well, it is one of these matches where you've got two counter-attacking temes who they'll stay in their penalty area and kick the ball the length of the pitch to the other, say, no, you have it. No, you have it. Go on. No. 2-1 to Leicester. And then the lot from Old Trafford against Leeds United. Okay, just on the basis that Leeds will come good at some point. Manchester United will score because their forwards are that good. Leeds to win 2-1 away.
Interesting, yeah. Man United against Leeds on Sunday. I think a draw for me. And then West Bromwich Albion against Aston Villa. Bit of a derby there. West Brom, it's in the papers today that possibly after tonight they might sack their manager, Slavan Bilic. So who knows what will happen this time on Saturday. Through the magic of audio, you'll be able to listen to this in the future and you'll know. West Brom against Villa, I think nothing more than a draw in that for West Brom, and nothing less than a draw for Villa.
Yeah, I think a Villa win 2-0.
And then two more games in this round. Burnley against Wolves. Wolves should win that, but Burnley might have the bit between their teeth a bit, having won their last game.
Yeah, I think a draw there, 1-1 draw. And the final match, Chelsea against West Ham. Oh, that's got a draw written all over it, hasn't it? I think, yeah, I'll go 2-2 draw.
And I'm going to go 2-0 to Chelsea. Sorry, Geoff. Well, that's almost all we've got time for. Time for the answer to your very interesting trivia question.
Okay, the question was, Jose Mourinho could become just the fifth manager to win the top-flight English title. So that means either Division 1, as it then was, or the Premier League, but with two different clubs. Who are the current four who have done it? Now, three of them, I think, are fairly obvious to most football fans. Kenny Dalglish, who did it with Liverpool and Blackburn. Brian Clough, who did it with Derby and Nottingham. Herbert Chapman, who did it with Huddersfield and Arsenal. And the fourth, who most people won't know, is a manager called Tom Watson, who did it with Sunderland and Liverpool. Now, at Sunderland, he won the league in 1891-2, 1892-3. It was a dismal failure in 1893-4. He only came runner-up. And in 1894-5, he won it again. So 3 years out of 4, he won it. The great thing about him, though, is not winning the first division, which one manager does every season, but he became the first manager to win the World Championship. There's the World Championship for clubs, and this match is the World Championship. It was held between the winners of the English League and the Scottish League. So Sunderland beat Hearts in the final of the World Championship in 1894-95. He then went on to Liverpool between 1896 and 1915, and I think he was the longest-serving manager for Liverpool. And he won the first division in 1900-01, which is the first year Tottenham won the FA Cup, by the way. 1905 to 1906. He then won FA Cup and all sorts of things with Liverpool, including the original of the Charity Shield called the Sheriff of London Charity Shield, which he won in 1906-07. So the answers are Tom Watson, Brian Clough, Kenny Dalglish and Herbert Chapman.
Brilliant. I love the little story there about the World Championship. How very untypical of the British to not exhibit their usual modesty and imagine that the world revolves around Britain. What a surprise.
Yeah, it's like American baseball teams winning the World Series. Fair play to you. You win a World Championship every year. Whoa.
Fantastic. That's all we've got time for. We'll be back next week. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
And that was Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.